Hello again, everyone. I'm Oriane Caitucoli, manager at FKCCI and coordinator of today's event. It's a pleasure to welcome you again for the second session of Tech4Earth Day. I now leave the floor to Guillaume.
Thank you, Oriane. Hi, everyone. Good morning for those in France. Good afternoon for the people in Korea. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'll be moderating this session entitled Toward Decarbonized Transport. But before we dive into it with our speakers, I'll very briefly introduce myself as well as the content of the session. So my name is Guillaume PARVAIX. I'm currently working for Hyundai Motor Company in the freshly renamed Innovation Division, where I work alongside a few hundred very talented individuals in Seoul, in HQ, but also all over the world with our global open innovation offices. Our main role is to contribute to the realization of Hyundai Motor Company's strategic goals by finding, working with, and eventually investing in innovative startups. Of course, we work in the field of mobility and mobility services, but also in energy sectors, cybersecurity, AI, smart city, robotics, smart factory, just to name a few. I'm happy to discuss all of that later on in the networking session, but I think it's more than enough about me. Today's topic is Tech4Earth, and our focus will be on decarbonized transport. A bit of context on this. As of today, transport, namely cars, trucks, planes, trains, account for around 25% of global CO2 emissions. Transport demand is also expected to grow across the world in the coming decades. The International Energy Agency expects global transport to double, car ownership rates to increase by 60%, and demand for passenger and freight aviation to triple by 2070. Combined, these factors will result in a large increase in transport emissions. But major technological innovations can help offset that rise in demand. As the world shifts towards lower carbon electricity sources, the rise of EVs, for example, offer a valuable option to reduce emissions from passenger vehicles. Other promising technologies focus on green hydrogen production or distribution, or even new smart mobility systems are also tackling this important issue. Today, we will focus on the role played by tech actors and how they are currently leading the change towards decarbonized transport. To discuss this topic, we have gathered three renowned experts in their respective field. It's time for me to briefly introduce them. First, I'd like to welcome Mr. David SADEK from Thales. David is VP of Research, Technology and Innovation at Thales, specifically in charge of AI and information processing. Second speaker, very happy to have Martin Wohrle here. Martin is a tech advisor for autonomous vehicle development at 42Dot. For the non-Korean people are not familiar with the Korean ecosystem, 42Dot is an amazing startup, Korean startup. I'm sure Martin will tell us more about it. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Cristian SANTIBANEZ from Hyperloop Transportation Technologies. Cristian is also an urban innovation and mobility expert. So thank you very much for being here today with us. As mentioned, I gave a very short introduction, but I think it would be good to start with a round of introduction. So please introduce yourselves in details and perhaps highlight some of your work on green or sustainable mobility if possible. Maybe David, if you would like to go first.
Yes, thank you very much, Guillaume, with great pleasure. So hi everybody. I'd like to thank very much KCCI for its invitation. I'm in Paris and very pleased to be virtually here with you today. Well, in Paris it's about 10 in the morning and the good news is that sun is shining. So it's make me somehow happy and very enthusiastic to participate to this event. Well, at Thales, as VP in particular in charge for AI, I am in charge of defining AI strategy at the group level and ensuring its implementation in all our business domains. Thales is a major player in mobility, be it in aerospace or in rail transportation. And in today's context of global warming, we cannot deal with mobility, neither do AI, ignoring the stakes of environment and planet preservation. This is why we need a green mobility and green AI as much in terms of a digital technology than as an enabler powering low carbon footprint solutions. Well, Thales aims at being a leader in innovating, designing and developing new technologies and solutions to sustainably and responsibly interact with the physical and digital worlds. And this includes, of course, all aspects of mobility. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I have been involved in issues on responsible digital technologies for a long time now. I was a founder of the Ethics Commission of the National Alliance on Digital Science. I'm a member of a think tank called the Committee 21 Perspectives, which deals with the implementation of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals from COP21. And I'm currently a member of the GPI, the Global Partnership on AI, where the concerns of responsible AI includes green AI, where these concerns are really paramount in this think tank. And I'm also a member of One AI, which is the OECD expert network on AI, where the concerns are the same. This is what I could say, just to highlight some of my interests in green technologies and green mobility.
Great, thank you very much. Martin, up to you, maybe.
Yes, Guillaume, thanks. So I'm a German engineer. I love French food, and I'm living in Korea now for more than 6 years. Worked for 30 years in automotive industry, first BMW, then I joined Hyundai, and now 42Dot, as Guillaume mentioned, which is a really great startup in Seoul. We started 2 years ago and already have 170 employees, and we develop autonomous transportation services for last mile, mid-mile delivery, as well as for people, shuttle, and robotaxi. I'm a technical advisor for the autonomous vehicle development and the global partnership. Some highlights. In my maybe BMW time, I was part of a team where we prepared a set of innovations to boost attractiveness, especially for the i3 at that time, where electric vehicles were not really sexy. Second, when I came to Korea, I was also responsible for technology transfer into BMW Munich, and I transferred some really nice technologies from Korea to Germany to improve battery performance, lifetime, and also reduce the footprint of the electric vehicles in general. In Hyundai, I was responsible for the future tech strategy, and one highlight towards decarbonization was supporting commercial vehicles to build up ecosystems, markets, and prepare them for fuel cell electric trucks. As you maybe you know from Switzerland, where Hyundai introduced a whole ecosystem from generating green hydrogen, building up the whole fleet, the maintenance, or the transportation as a service on a very efficient way. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Cristian, up to you.
Thank you very much for that, Guillaume. Thanks a lot, Martin and David as well. Hello, everyone. My name is Cristian. I like to call myself a cause-driven professional, and sustainability has been a red thread throughout all my activities. small personal background, I've lived in 8 countries across 4 continents. I speak 6 languages, and I'm generally speaking obsessed about how to have a positive impact over 1 billion people. A few years ago, alongside Ross Douglas and Maureen Well, we pioneered the sustainable mobility narrative in France and Europe by building the first event that was dedicated to new mobility outside the traditional car industry-led motor shows. Autonomy, which is the name of this venture, started 6 years ago, was a big success, and remains today the leading community for these topics in Europe. Now, if you look at the big picture, I think Guillaume, you introduced it. I always like to remind also kind of the backdrop against which we're thinking about things. There's about 200,000 new urbanites every day. It's been going on since 2010. It's going to keep going on until about 2050. And that's almost the same as saying that we need to build 1 metropolitan Amsterdam every 2 weeks, or roughly, that I looked this up because I've never been to Korea, roughly 1 metropolitan Gwangju every 2 weeks. The ongoing wave of urbanization is unprecedented in human history, and it's either the greatest opportunity we have to change the existing and unsustainable ecosystems that we have, or it's what's going to cause the next world war or some other end of civilization type of event. I'm saying this lightly, but I really mean it. HyperloopTT is building one of the most challenging technologies of the 21st century. And I truly believe that it is this century's opportunity to change the rules of the game for good. We are not just building a zero emission solution, we are actually net positive. Our system produces more energy than it actually consumes, and it's the only mass transport solution in which you can invest today that's actually going to have a positive return on investment while you're still alive. So yeah, that's about me and what I believe in.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much, the 3 of you. So now let's just dive right into it with a question in about France and about Korea. So I guess, Martin, you'll be the one for Korea, and I'm happy to help you as well. Can you give us a quick overview of the challenges that transportation faces in Korea and obviously in France as well? And in your opinion, how did the pandemic affect mobility behaviors?
So I mean, if I compare France and Korea, it's somehow similar, because we have both countries have the greater area of the main city, Paris and Seoul, and they host almost I mean, in Korea it's 50% of the population, and this is a very effective space where you can do improvements, and this has a very immediate impact. So, and the other thing in Korea is especially that the population is really commuting a lot. This is there's a high demand for it, and as well as in the delivery service. So logistics is a big thing in Korea, where you can order everything and everything in time, incredible fast. But that means a lot of transportation in the city. So this is really a challenge here. It makes life convenient, but it's really from the transportation and from the carbonization that is an issue. So that is a significant factor. But the good thing, what I mentioned, is if we find good solutions in transportation, that will quickly help and improve the situation, because we immediately replace existing solutions and can optimize the transportation of the future. So considering the company 42 and what we do, it's possible for us to do some dynamic routing and introduce some eco-driving, autonomous driving behavior. We can reduce empty trips. We can handle also the reverse logistics to close the whole cycle. Yeah, another aspect is that we have right now we have many transportation vehicles which still run under combustion engines, and I mean, introducing this kind of new services based on electric vehicles. And anyways, the light commercial vehicle is the fastest growing vehicle segment worldwide, so we will have a big impact here. Energy. If I see Korea and compare to other countries, we are a little bit behind. So renewable energy in Korea is, if I'm correct, around about 5% of the electricity production, and this is still not where it has to be. Same with the fleet, the electric vehicles in Korea. It's catching up now. So the last 2 years we saw many more electric vehicles, and also the EV infrastructure, charging infrastructure was improving a lot, but still not on the target. On the other hand, we also saw last year that the government really pushed the whole eco-friendly and decarbonization aspects with a program which is called Korea New Deal. And the most relevant for us is the Korea Green Deal, with approximately 50 billion euro until 2025. And that supports any activities in the country which really improves and do the disruption and changes which are really necessary. One example for that, Korea will build up the biggest offshore windmill park in the world. And European companies, as well as Korean, are highly welcome to support that program and to increase the renewable energy ratio in Korea. In terms of pandemic, I think Korea managed quite well. We even saw on this high level of commuting and delivery even an increase. We had somehow in between a little bit more working from home, but on the other hand, the delivery services really exploded. And this has a major impact, but I think it will stay, because it makes, if you see how comfortable it is, that is really something which will stay, and we have to improve. In terms of public transportation, my observation was that the Korean society really adopted well. Korean people are trained to this kind of diseases or infections, and so the mask was no problem, and all the public transportation, even the taxis, they introduced some shield between driver and the guests. So everything was managed quite well on that. In terms of decarbonization, yeah, I think electric vehicles, getting green energy, this is something which is now in the main agenda of Korea government.
Great, thank you for the overview. I don't have much to add on Korea, so I might let Cristian, if you want to jump on that question for France.
Sure. So as you know, we're building infrastructure, so we're very aware of what's going on both at the national, at the continental levels, and all the geographies where we're implemented. In Europe, and I'm going to speak for Europe and France, the European Commission is orchestrating and supporting the green transition with funding, with initiatives, with research, in order really to foster the development of a new industry centered around sustainable growth. The OECD also speaks about this, about the green growth opportunity. And transportation, of course, is a big component of this. France is proactively moving this agenda forward as well. At the big picture level, public policy in France, I believe, seems to be focusing on empowering cities and regions to decide on how to best incentivize this change. And the key challenges that most territories, because ultimately this is about land, this is about places where we live, the key challenges that most territories seems to be facing revolve around, I think, 3 major topics, each with its own subset of challenges. The first one is really, how do we reduce polluting trips? This is about incentivizing sustainable behaviors like biking for short distance trips, getting rid of the idea that it's okay to be alone in your combustion engine car, but also thinking about the logistics side and supporting local businesses and short circuit distribution. This is very present in a lot of regions and territories in France, especially since the pandemic. The second big challenge is developing intermodality and interoperability so that you can ultimately increase the options available and encourage a mutualization of trips and more fluidity during a journey, which is also about being inclusive and considering people that have accessibility issues. And finally, the third big challenge, of course, and this is, I think, something that is very easy to perceive, is getting rid of combustion engines, which is about renewing the existing fleet, developing new technologies, building the right infrastructure, and so on. None of these, of course, is an easy challenge, but and again, there's a whole set of subsets, but I believe these three are good guidelines to understand that. And the pandemic, of course, has had a good impact on these trends. A lot of cities use confinement as an opportunity to accelerate the development of biking infrastructure. And the French, we are actually embracing this change and this adoption of biking. There were tons of articles about how people actually rediscovered the pleasure of biking after the confinement period, and conversations as well. Remote work, most analysts will confirm this too, is not an ephemeral trend. It's here to stay, and the immediate impact it's had on mobility is that it tends to reduce the total number of trips, which is one of the key challenges around sustainable mobility. I'm not familiar at all with the Korean picture, unfortunately, but I do know that the biking industry in Asia in general is bigger than in Europe, like average urban density. So my guess would be that Korea is a very fertile ground for sustainable mobility. And in fact, I think, Martin, that you absolutely confirmed that intuition that I had.
Great, thank you very much, David. If you have also something to add on this one.
Yeah, I can just emphasize what my colleagues have just said. Yeah, there are several common points between France and Korea. Well, in France, transport services and rail infrastructures are managed at state or region levels in the country where the density is low. So the network has been built as a web with Paris as its center, connected to big cities. And in the past, major investments were driven in particular by high-speed rail, the TGV, for passenger traffic, connecting Paris with those large cities. Where the train is the preferred mean for transportation in France, with TGV from Paris to the major largest cities in Europe. And within Paris itself, metro is the modality for transportation, which is the most preferred one. And with the project which is called the Grand Paris, which enlarge the city to the Paris region with rail connections, makes it even much more pushed ahead. There is also a move in favor of using the train for journeys of less than 2 hours and 30 in France. Let me recall that a city as Brussels, for example, is at about 1 hour 15 minutes from Paris by train. So it makes it really accessible just by using rail transportation. Nowadays, as there is an ambition at the European level to set transport on a path to full decarbonization by 2050, this implies a modal shift to rail, really. And the major challenges to be addressed in France are, in my view, twofold. The first one is to invest to modernize the existing network and rolling stock to increase number of passengers and freight transported by rail. And the second one is to have a territorial rebalancing with policies in favor of small towns. Today, people who live in the countryside and who want to travel to major urban hubs within, say, 50 kilometers, for example, have little option but to take their car, if they have one, of course. And that's because there are simply no train or bus services that would provide them with an alternative form of transport. So today, in the wake of coronavirus pandemic, there is a sharp increase in interest from city resident, from city resident wanting to relocate the countryside, and home working seems to become a long-term pattern. As you, of course, all of us we are experiencing it for a while now. Well, from all these point of views, I think that the commonalities between French context or European context and Korean context are several, and I think that we could cross-fertilize solutions brought by each of our two countries, or even we can extend it also to the European countries.
Great, thank you. I will, David. I will stay with you for this next question, actually, with a focus on what you are doing at Thales. There are new approaches to AI that are being developed, especially in Europe, that considers more ethics and transparency. In that sense, Thales has developed something called True AI. Could you elaborate on this, and then we will be able to expand with the other speaker.
Yes, yes, Guillaume. Well, algorithms and data have taken a huge place in our daily life, from the way we move to the way we make decisions, and the stakes are crucial. So in this context, we deeply need AI solutions we can trust, an AI that users and operators can rely on in high value added decision making. AI is at the heart of Thales' digital transformation. It's one of the 4 technological pillars on which the group is basing its transformation. The other 3 are big data, Internet of Things and connectivity, and cybersecurity. And through its various fields of activity, covering aeronautics, space, rail transportation, security and defense, Thales operates in the world of critical systems, which is a highly regulated universe where the stakes of decisions taken and the actions carried out can be just vital. And this is why, by nature, the AI technologies developed or used by Thales must meet the requirements of trustworthy AI. These requirements are validity, explainability, security, and responsibility. And Thales' True AI approach reflects this vision. The word true summarizes it. TR stands for transparent, U for understandable, and E for ethical. And safe or valid AI is an AI which does what is meant to do, no more, no less. Just like in justice, I mean, the truth, all the truth, and only the truth. And an explainable AI is an AI which is able to provide justifications of its recommendations and decisions in real time if necessary, in human understandable language, and in a way adapted to the context. A secure AI is an AI which is robust and resilient to cyber attacks of all kinds, and a responsible AI is an AI which complies with ethical principles, including sustainability and preservation of the planet, as well as with legal and regulatory framework. Now, as far as the green AI is concerned, the aim of Thales, as I said in my introduction, is to be a leader in innovating, designing, and developing these new technologies and solutions to sustainably and responsibly interact within the physical and the digital worlds. And on the one hand, we are focusing on what we call frugal AI, as much as about the use of data than the energy consumption. Frugal learning, which consists in using as few data as possible, is a major research topic at Thales. Our teams are also working on a very disruptive new type of hardware technology, which is based on artificial nanoneurons, very low energy consuming, And this revolutionary technology is receiving a worldwide acknowledgement. On the other hand, we are working on applications where AI help reduce carbon emissions. I will say a few words later if you give me the opportunity. For example, by optimizing flight paths in order to minimize the generation of vapor trails, which are called contrails. And another use case in the rail domain, where a solution as green speed, which is deployed by Thales, also optimize the train speed to reduce energy consumption and consequently carbon emissions. There are several other solutions. Maybe I will mention some of them a little bit later. This is the global picture, I would say, of our approach of what we call this true AI or trustworthy AI for critical systems.
Great, thank you very much, David. I think let's stay on the AI topic and move it a bit more on the mobility sector. We often hear that the future of mobility is networked, individualized, and intermodal. In what ways AI and machine learning can actually be used towards sustainable mobility through smart transportation systems? It would be good to hear from each of you an example, and as well as some of the risks and challenges. Maybe Martin, I'd like to start with you.
Yeah, I mean, AI and machine learning, they are, of course, they are the enabling technology for the core product of autonomous driving, which is for me one of the key elements which we need to build systems which at the end can reduce the greenhouse gas. But at the end, those two technologies are also on the execution level, on the day-by-day operations when it comes to the decision-making of those really complex optimization algorithm. So, for example, the automated commissioning of the goods, the dynamic real-time planning of the routes, and even the driving behavior, because there is no ego factor, and this is something which can really. Driving is not a fun issue anymore in those kind of vehicles. This is more really you can optimize that and reduce the consumption or the energy consumption a lot. The whole ecosystem is quite complex. If you consider as well the reverse logistics and also the circular system design, this is something which can be done much easier with AI and machine learning, especially in time. If you have to do this kind of decisions in real time to optimize the whole system in general, this is something where without AI, that's I think that's impossible to control that. Yeah, and of course identify empty trips, so reducing unnecessary transportation as well.
Thank you. Cristian, maybe?
Sure. Unfortunately, I cannot share concrete examples of what we are working on, but I can definitely share some of the analysis that guides our thinking around these topics. When you look at what drives decision-making in mobility for end users, it's really sad, but environment is not the main factor. Price is first, comfort comes second, and travelers and users of all sorts ultimately really expect a frictionless journey. The rise of the internet, and even more so the smartphone, overall has created a society that expects to have exactly what they want when they want it at as a low cost as possible. So you have to create transportation that is passenger-centric and frictionless. People are less willing to wait in lines and want to be delivered directly to city centers instead of transportation hubs or on the outskirts of cities. There's an appetite for immediacy, and that must coincide with sustainable solutions that protect the ability for future generations to have access to resources for life. I like very much the parallel with electricity here. When electricity was invented, cables were all over the place. And it wasn't until electricity fully integrated and merged with our walls and basically disappeared from our side that we took a switch for granted. In a very similar way, behaving in a sustainable manner should be the norm, something that we take for granted that just happens, not something that is an exception. And so to get there, we really need the friction that is embedded in sustainable behaviors to disappear. This is where AI, I think, and machine learning can help a lot. Machine learning and AI can create operating systems that embed themselves into people's daily lives with their consent and reinforce sustainable actions in a subtle way. The new generations are much more open to sharing the data that is required to reach this level of recommendation and customization of services, provided, of course, that the service quality is there and that data control is not just a catchphrase. Data privacy, when we're talking about these things, is really essential, and end users cannot be denied control upon it. In that sense, again, the new generation understands what the blockchain can do, even in the face of black boxes that machine learning algorithms can create when processing oceans of data. Ultimately, a frictionless, sustainable journey can be something as simple, as suggesting to someone to take an electric bicycle instead of taxi to avoid traffic and save time on the journey. And hey, the electric bicycle is just there, 30 seconds away from you, and it won't cost you more. It can be about creating an entirely new form of transportation that can bring airplane speeds to the ground with zero emissions while giving energy back to the grid and orchestrating the entire mobility ecosystem around new standards and privacy protocols.
Thank you. Thank you. You ended abruptly, so I thought you had an issue, but no worries. Thank you.
Dramatic ending.
Perfect. David, maybe if you have something to add, maybe I could repeat the question if some people joined us. We were on mobility and AI, and wondering in what ways AI and machine learning can be used towards sustainable mobility through smart transportation systems. So David, maybe you had something on
yes.
with Thales on that topic.
Oh yes, well, AI and is impacting and will be impacting deeply all aspects of mobility. This is there is no doubt about this. Not only machine learning, by the way, not only data-driven AI, but also all the aspects of AI, knowledge-based AI, and probably that the virtuous trajectory would be the combination, the smart combination between the two approaches of AI, the one which is based on data processing and machine learning, and the other branch which is rather based on explicit models of behavior, of intelligent behaviors, because in many cases we can explicitly formalize and model the behaviors we would like to reproduce or would like to automatize. I just would like to give a few examples where Thales is applying algorithms and in many cases also AI approaches to enhance the green mobility. For example, I mentioned this green speed solution for trains, which is there is a version for metros which is called green CBTC. These solutions are used in manual and automatic driving modes. They can smoothly drive the train and at the same time save between 10 and 15% traction power consumption without degrading passenger comfort and service punctuality, thanks to their advanced algorithms. The algorithm-based driving advice ensures improved punctuality. And it's important for both passengers and train operators to save energy and reduce CO2 emissions, of course. Another example is a platform which is called Tires, which is able to digest very high volume of data received from equipment along the track, and thanks to big data and AI techniques, predict failures and advise the maintenance team. And let me give a third example from Singapore, where we have an initiative called DIVA, which is a solution developed by our digital factory with a Singapore urban rail transportation operator. And what DIVA does is to extract real-time metro passenger density data from existing CCTV cameras on station platforms and trains, and uses AI video analytics, and it provides direct guidance to passengers to select less dense spots in platforms and train. It will also help operators in their decision making. And we have a similar solutions also, which is called Naya in Hong Kong, where it uses also real-time ticketing data and analyze video feed. And thanks to AI techniques, this solution is able to build real-time passenger density maps for the operation control center, and can assist passenger in using the less crowded corridors in stations, and choosing the less crowded coaches on the platform. And I can also mention other solutions, not only in the rail domain. For example, in Singapore, where we are experiencing solutions which is called also AI for Green. It's a project that we are investigating for metros. With the hot and humid climate, air conditioning in Singapore is almost a necessity. So we believe it can consume less energy thanks to AI using analytics, and in this case, it's reinforcement learning. And maybe just a word on what the green ATM, which is the air traffic management. We have a joint lab in Singapore, which is called Air Lab. It's a joint lab with the CAS, which is the Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore. And we will be working on green ATM solutions to reduce the greenhouse gases emissions. For example, how are we going to do this? Is, for instance, continuous descent operations, rather than step by step, can achieve significant CO2 emissions. So we work on this kind of optimizing the trajectory of the aircrafts. Another example is by routing an aircraft in accordance to weather conditions, so that its engine performance is more efficient. That's what we call combustion efficient routing, for example. Let me now just mention other applications, typical applications of AI in rail transportation we are investigating. Of course, there is the train autonomy, which is the first that comes to mind. And historically, if Thales masters since then 30 years driverless train operations, automatic train protection is traditionally controlled from a wayside equipment, and taking advantage from progress in the car industry as well as Thales capabilities. So we are now developing an incremental roadmap towards autonomous trains, including onboard safe positioning and obstacle detection, and bringing advantages in operation efficiency, system smooth evolution, and cost benefits in infrastructure maintenance, of course. The second application is on video analytics. As trains become driverless, AI-based video analytics for both onboard and station supervision becomes necessary, whether to measure passenger density, as I mentioned, for DIVA and Naya, for example, or to detect abnormal presence outside revenue hours, detect a fire or any kind of hazard in the area. And finally, AI improves operations and maintenance efficiency, as I mentioned, for Thales platform, through the automation of operational processes like moving trains automatically outside passenger service, or data-driven decision support, for instance, to optimize passenger flow patterns through the network. So this is why we really think that AI is definitely going to impact significantly both rail operations and rail systems, and Thales is investing to prepare for that evolutions, in particular to develop trustworthy AI solutions, as I said earlier, compatible with usage in safety and mission critical systems.
Great, thank you very much for a very comprehensive explanation on what you're working on with Thales. The next one would be for you, Cristian, only, so you'll have time to develop. Of course, if the other speakers want to jump in, they can definitely feel free to do so. But a question on Hyperloop transportation technologies. You mentioned in the introduction you are building the next breakthrough in mobility with a unique and decentralized ecosystem of more than 800 contributors, 50 plus corporate partners across 42 countries. It is involving mass collaboration and crowdsourcing. Can you explain a little bit the concept itself and the originality of such a business model?
Sure. I'm actually going to post a poll for our audience because I see that there's a poll tool asking who has heard of it, to what extent. So it's just published, I think, just now. Great. So on our organizational model, which indeed is quite unique, first, you got to start with a simple question. How does a traditional organization or a startup tackle innovation and challenges? The traditional path is fairly known. You raise funds, you hire people, and you ask the people you hire to solve the problems that you're facing and that you want to solve. In this traditional model, by definition, the power of collective intelligence is limited to the people your funding will let you pay in cash. Dirk Alborn founded HyperloopTT 8 years ago in 2013, fully aware of the challenges that a company looking to create large-scale infrastructure innovation would face. And in the digital era, I think we tend to forget that as soon as you build something, iteration becomes harder, more expensive, and VC funding becomes scarcer. So Dirk really looked to create a new organizational model that could harness what he likes to call the global cognitive surplus with a low cash burn rate. And this idea of harnessing the global cognitive surplus with a low cash burn rate is really the main innovation of our model. We expand the talent base and innovate broader, not by spending more, but by spending better. The result is an organizational model that is pioneered by Harvard, by MIT, and by USC PhD doctors with the ability to catalyze high-impact innovation. It all revolves around the idea that the work that we do today will bear tremendous value tomorrow, and that what we are building is loaded with meaning. It has a deep purpose, a strong why, and that drives people, talent, humans. The roots of this model really lie in crowdsourcing and crowd equity, but we took it one step further by using equity as a currency. Our future value becomes present and tangible work. Very practically speaking, what we do is that we recruit passionate experts that really believe in what we do, that are ready to become part of this adventure, and we compensate their contributions, as we call them, with stock options. The value that our community creates, the innovation it generates, ensures that long-term health of the company is embedded into the incentive itself. And these experts or contributors, as we refer to them, join the company knowing that their work is valued and that they're going to be making a tangible impact to the adoption of commercial Hyperloop systems around the globe. Just to give you an example, our company was able to generate the world's first Hyperloop feasibility study many years ago now by combining almost 60,000 hours of work. And this happened before we had raised $1 of funding. So this happened 100% thanks to our contributors. Today, our community of experts is an established network of more than 800 highly skilled individuals across 5 continents, and they work in all company departments. This is not limited to engineering. This is true for any of the company's departments. We've created powerful partnerships with universities and corporations as well as an expansion of this model. And ultimately, we really like to think of this community as a passion-driven and unstoppable force that is working across countries, time zones, and disciplines to fast-track the future that they collectively believe in. Goes without saying, so I'm now going to look at the results of the poll. There's 3/4 of the audience that seem to have never heard of the model. So if you have any questions about our model, if you want to talk about it, please post the questions in the Q&A section. Feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to keep talking about it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think we're okay on time, so we'll have enough to answer a few questions. So thank you very much, Cristian.
You're welcome.
Actually, I think it's actually the last question. The rest would be just a small conclusion. So to all of you, our speakers, more of a general question on the ecosystem and mobility startup. The ecosystem of actors in the mobility sector is particularly complex. There are all types of stakeholders, from national to local authorities, global organization, large groups, and also smaller economic players. How do you see the role of startups in this complex ecosystem, and how could this role be enhanced? Martin, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you, because you really had the best of both worlds with your experience, I think. So please go ahead.
So you call it the best of both worlds? Yeah, you're right. So 28 years, or 29 years in the traditional industry, the big industry. I mean, the big industry is very powerful, very efficient, because the processes and everything is somehow really strong. But on the other hand, startups, they really have the big opportunity and the chance, and they are driven to make something different, not as an additional package. It's mandatory. They have to go and have to create and convince with attractive products and services, because they have no long history and a brand image where they can rely on. So they're really driven and much faster. So and my recommendation would be that that startups, they don't necessarily need money only, because there's a lot of money in the mobility sector right now, as you see with all the SPACs and what happens in NASDAQ. It's more getting support for pilot programs, permits to do testing in real areas, and grant to public requests. This is really helpful to challenge the new products and services against reality. So guiding startups and leading them to the right direction, helping them getting contact to the real life, that will accelerate and create probably excellent solutions.
Thank you, Martin. Cristian, if you'd like to add something on this, I imagine you had to also navigate that complex ecosystem with Hyperloop.
So we've had to navigate the startup ecosystem because we are very partnership driven, as you probably guessed. Personally, when we were building autonomy as well, startups and innovators were a key component of how we are building a green mobility narrative. So that also became an opportunity to explore that sector a lot more. And actually, before I joined the team of HyperloopTT, I was leading the Move Lab, which is Station F's mobility program. So Station F is the world's largest startup campus. This is just kind of an expansion to say that it's a world that I understand, that I've been in contact with, and the role it plays in the ecosystem of mobility. I mean, when you look at traffic jams, crowded metros, delayed planes, low-cost trips that destroy public health, generally speaking, again, today's mobility systems are filled with friction and they create frustration. Change in the space is needed. And like with any system that needs to change can come either from the inside or from the outside. When we talk about startups, in this case, innovative ventures trying to change the status quo, or reimagining the way certain services are delivered to certain market segments, in mobility, the reality of innovation encompasses a huge diversity of organizations that are tackling a million different challenges, from ticketing to hydrogen, micromobility, logistics, parking, charging infrastructure, and so on. So it's actually hard, I think, to put them all in the same basket. This being said, they all are either trying to change something that exists or reinvent the wheel so that we can move people and goods in a sustainable and efficient way. Startups, I like to think, have time, but tend to lack immediate funding, not funding opportunities, network, and sometimes also permission to try, especially in the field of mobility. And the latter leads to actually a whole range of challenges that they have to face that other industries not always have to face. Established orchestrators, as we like to call them, whether it's large corporations or public authorities, tend to usually have what startups lack, whether it's funding, network, or the right to grant permissions, or at least some of it. So to enhance their role, the role of startups in this system, I think it's all about making collaborations easier. Some examples include special contracts to build partnerships or test proof of concepts with large corporations who usually tend to be much slower in their decision-making process. So how can you fast-track a collaboration with a much smaller player? Dedicated places for experimenting in existing public infrastructure, mobility hubs, for example, parking spaces, so that someone can imagine what the next micromobility device will be. Tax exemptions for solutions tackling key public policy issues such as a greener mobility industry, rezoning of target areas to allow for in vivo experimentations and POCs. I think, as a matter of fact, this is something that Korea has pioneered as well. Upskilling programs also for the existing workforce to better understand what emerging technology can do, and so on. There's tons of examples of things that can happen so as to enhance the role of startups. We, HyperloopTT, would specifically deploy a technology creator and network orchestrator model that looks to partner with industry leaders instead of competing with them. It's very easy to see a threat in what we do, but we believe that there's a lot more value in seeing the opportunities that we're going to create, the spaces that we're going to enable, and we're very happy to open the door to the existing industry. And find ways we can work together. By using this method, we believe that ultimately we're decreasing the time to market for innovative solutions because we harvest global know-how. Instead of getting into an overly simplistic and erroneous competition mindset, we create a model that allows us to work with partners and create solutions that leverage industry-leading existing technology while securing the long-term future of both firms. This is a mutually beneficial relationship that we can build, and we think that by far it outperforms the existing approach. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, David. If you have anything to add on.
Yeah, maybe just one word. Yeah,
well.
this is. Yeah. I can just add one word or few words to what has been said before. Yeah, well, as you said in your question, the mobility ecosystem is a complex ecosystem, gathering public, private organizations, startups, major companies, and so on. And in this ecosystem, of course, startups are playing a key role in innovation and in accelerating the journey to business, thanks to their agility, for example. And maybe just to mention some hotspots where Thales is helping startups to grow up and to accelerate. I can mention Station F, which has also been mentioned by Cristian in Paris, where Thales is leading the track on cybersecurity. I can mention also AI at SANTIBANEZ in Montreal, where Thales is leading the AI track in this incubator, and can mention also Starburst, where we are partnering also to identify the startups which are the most relevant to our businesses. And what we're trying to do is also to set up some kind of long-term also partnerships with startups, starting with POCs, and then really involving startups in our roadmaps and operational roadmaps in order to bring innovation to the market. So yes, this is something which is somehow obvious, I would say, to underline the fact that startups are key players in this ecosystem. And as I said, this key player is really helping also major companies to be more agile in bringing innovation as soon as possible, especially regarding AI technologies, for example. And this is why the major companies and also public organizations have to really think of taking care of the relationship with the startups and involving them as real partners, and not only subcontracting, for example, but having them are real partners in developing innovations and resulting business.
Great, thank you very much. We have 10 minutes left, so I think we can very briefly conclude, or maybe take on some questions now, and then if we have a second to conclude, we will take it. I think there are some good questions, so might as well answer them. A couple of questions, maybe directly staying with you, David. One question was mentioning, does Thales think about partnership with Korea to develop electric mobility, especially batteries and driving algorithm?
This is a good question. I'm not sure that I will be able to answer it right now. I take it. I don't know everything in Thales. I don't want to say something which is not true. It's not impossible that there are at least perspectives to do this. But I will be happy to answer this question offline, or when I will make sure that we are really we are in the perspective to do this with Korea. But this is, of course, beyond the question. It's a good idea. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Maybe this question before the concluding remark from Thibault. How do the various initiatives presented today account for the utilization of and the reliance on rare earth minerals in terms of sustainability? So this is quite a big question, but it was asked at the beginning. So I don't know who is brave enough to jump on this one and answer. Obviously, in every transformation, there are big changes, and it's true that moving from combustion engine to electric vehicle is not entirely clean with what is used to create batteries. But again, I don't know if maybe Cristian, if you want to answer that, or Martin, if you have anything to say.
Yeah, maybe one idea is if it comes to the autonomous driving. It's obvious that the utilization rate of those vehicles is much higher, and for that also the usage of the raw materials in the motor and batteries, and where we need that necessarily, that will reduce the total impact or the total need request for those rare materials. That is probably much better than have it in each individual vehicle standing in the garage, because you always have to consider the whole so the whole life cycle from generating, producing the products, of course, then the using time, but then also the recycling. So if you consider the whole cycle, autonomous vehicles definitely will increase the utilization rate of those rare materials, which are still necessary. But automotive industries and the related industries are anyways working to replace them by using less and less. So this is, if you see the cobalt in the batteries, that's a big improvement in the meantime, and there will be some more technologies coming up to replace those rare materials.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Martin. Cristian, maybe if you have, but we only have 5 minutes for the concluding remarks, so I'd like to give those 5 minutes to you, and each of you if you want to conclude. So up to you, Cristian, unless you want to add something on that question.
No, I mean, I would love actually to be able to add more to that question, but unfortunately I cannot, because I'm not directly related with the engineers who are developing our new technologies for batteries or the components that, at least in the current state of technology, do indeed use rare earth materials. What I can share is that we have a very intrinsic desire to do better and to be as sustainable as can be today. But that would be, and for me, it's very frustrating to just have to stop my answer at that.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, but maybe if you want to continue and include that in your 30 seconds concluding remarks,
yeah,
that could work as well.
No, so of course, and I mean, first, a word of conclusion. I mean, first goes without saying, I'll stay online. So if anyone wants to keep discussing afterwards through the platform, I'm more than happy to keep talking one-on-one, or maybe there's a way to create groups or something. I don't know. But to conclude, I mean, we've said it several times today, HyperloopTT is building the first breakthrough in mobility in over a century. Our CEO was speaking to the US Congress last week about this unique opportunity that we have to get transportation right. And what we're building, really, I like to see it as the first true alternative to the backbone that currently supports an inefficient, unsustainable mobility system. So I really kind of want to extend an open invitation for all to join this adventure, whether you want to become a contributor, whether you want to open a discussion to partner with us. We believe in technology that augments humans. We don't believe in technology that diminishes humans. And we truly believe that, you know, our journey is first and foremost a collective journey that we're undertaking. So yeah, that would be my concluding words.
Great, thank you. Martin, if you want to add a few words to conclude this session.
Yes, maybe considering the automotive industry. So we have 4 disruptive elements which are highly relevant, and where I can see now the culmination of those 4 elements of disruption. And the time for that is really perfect now to combine and set a new standard, or new standards for sustainable transportation. This is really perfect timing now. And for Korea, I can state even we are not on the target, but we are now on a really good track to fight against the greenhouse gas emissions. And in terms of decarbonization, I can really promise you that at 42.0, for us, it's mandatory and obvious that we go 100% on pure electric fleet.
Great, thank you very much, Martin. David, I guess you'll have the last words on today's session.
Okay, thank you, Guillaume. Well, maybe I should mention also that we are really on the way to develop and offer to our customers this trustworthy AI for mobility and this green AI. By the way, we are also working on the engineering processes and build the appropriate framework for this. This is especially addressed within the grand challenge in France on AI. It's called Confiance.ai. Confiance means trust in French. And this is a partnership approach whose objective is to build and produce all the tools and processes to design, develop, validate, even certify, deploy, and maintain AI-based systems in operational conditions. And Thales has been involved in this program since its inception in really proactive manner, where we have rail transportation use cases where the early results would be experimented on within this context. And by the way, Thales also is leading the European program on AI, which is called the AI for You, with a consortium of more than 80 partners. So it's a very big ecosystem with academics, large companies, and SMEs and startups. And we are also leading this AI manifesto, or industrial manifesto for AI in France, with more than 15 major companies in France sharing the same values on trustworthy AI for critical systems. Yes, this is just to conclude. I would say that we are currently investigating more than 20 business cases in the field of AI in all domains of activity of the group. And in the case of our transportation business, half of our product lines will include products within include AI products within the next 5 years. And finally, I just would like also to say that I was very happy to see so many common points between France and Korea, and how the approaches to for green mobility could really we could cross-fertilize in these two countries, and then think that our actions contribute to pave the way to green mobility and to beneficial AI for humanity. So let's build together a world we can all trust.